part 2 of Alexander Cockburn's essay here. This is not my own writing. Please realize that. It's Obama's fault too that as a communicator he cannot rally and inspire the nation from its fears. From his earliest years, he has schooled himself not to be too excitable, not to be an angry black man who would be too alarming to his white friends at Harvard and his later corporate patrons. Self-control was his passport to the guardians of the system, who were desperate to find a symbolic leader to restore America's credibility in the world after the disasters of the Bush era. And those were many, and I remember them well, in case you've forgotten. Our civil liberties were curtailed massively under the Bush-Cheney regime. And for the most part, all of this is continuing to this very day. So now Americans in increasing numbers have lost confidence in him. For the first time in the polls, negative assessments outnumber the positive. He no longer commands trust. His support is drifting down to 40%. The straddle that allowed him to flatter corporate chieftains at the same time as blue-collar workers now seems like the most vapid opportunism. The casual campaign pledge to wipe out Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan is now being cashed out in a disastrous campaign viewed with dismay by the majority of Americans. The polls portend disaster. It now looks as though the Republicans may well recapture not only the House but also the Senate. The public mood is so contrarian that, even though the polls show that voters think that the Democrats may have some better ideas on the economy than the Republicans, they will vote against incumbent Democrats in the midterm elections, the Democrats who have sold them out. My comment here in brackets. Obama has sought out Bill Clinton to advise him in this desperate hour. If Clinton is frank, he will remind Obama that his own hopes for a progressive first term were destroyed by the failure of his health care reform in the spring of 1993. By August of that year, he was importing Republican David Gergen into the White House to run it. Obama had his window of opportunity last year when he could have made jobs and financial reform his prime objectives. That's basically what Americans hope for. Mesmerized by economic advisors who were creatures of the banks, he instead plunged into the sea of health reform, wasted the better part of the year, and ended up with something that pleases no one. What can save President Obama now? It's hard to even identify a straw that he can grasp at. It's awfully early in the game to say it, but as Marlene Dietrich said to Orson Welles in Touch of Evil, your future is all used up. This essay comes from Alexander Cockburn over at Counterpunch. I'll post a direct link to that essay because I think it's basically the truth. And all people, who supported the initial Tea Party movement, dating back to Ron Paul, should remember that finding scapegoats and racism is not the answer in this country. Because what you need to realize is that basically the global financial elite is pitting us all against each other. All people in all countries against each other for the lowest wages possible. It is truly, truly a race to the bottom. And it's not going to end well unless people start getting outraged and speak up. Good night.